It's story time, 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 it's story time with Uncle Scotty. I just realized that It's Story Time is inspired by the Batman theme song from long ago. Ask your parents. Hey, it's Story Time with Uncle Scotty. I'm your host, Uncle Scotty. Thank you so much for being here. Makes me so happy. Everyone mugs. Hydration is important. Also important, those clean hands. Can't hold books without clean hands. Can't put on our trusty glasses without clean hands. Can't thank our sponsors time and time again without clean hands. Time. Because what is story without time? Time. It's story. Time. Making stories more flavorful and delicious since 11:22 a.m. Now, our friends in James and the Giant Peach by Roald Dahl had just escaped a great fear. Cloudmen attacking them with all kinds of things. Rotten eggs, hair tonic, stepladders, paint, all kinds of things. They had just worked on getting out of the way of the Cloudmen. We'll see if they're safe or not, but the big thing was a bucket of purple paint from the rainbow hit the centipede and covered him head to toe, 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 42 toes. Times 5, I suppose. Don't know how many toes centipedes have, but at least 42. And we'll find out what happens next. Yo, we're on chapter 29, on page 113. Page 113. High five. For that. Okay, cool. Chapter 29. It seemed like a long time before the seagulls were able to pull the peach away from that horrible rainbow cloud. But they managed at last, and everybody gathered around this wretched centipede and began arguing about the best way to get this paint off of his body. He really did look a sight. He was purple all over. And now that the paint was beginning to dry and harden, he was forced to sit very stiff and upright, as though he were encased in cement. And all 42 of his legs were sticking out straight in front of him like rods. He tried to say something, but his lips wouldn't move. All he could do now was make gurgling noises in his throat. The old green grasshopper reached out and touched him carefully on the stomach. "But how could it possibly have dried so quickly?" he asked. "It's rainbow paint," James answered. "Rainbow paint dries very quick and very hard." I don't know where James got this information, but shout out to you, James, for paying attention in class. "I detest paint," Miss Spider announced. "It frightens me. It reminds me of Aunt Spiker. The late Aunt Spiker. I mean, because the last time she painted her kitchen ceiling, my poor darling grandmother stepped into it by mistake when it was still wet, and there she stuck. And all through the night we could hear her calling us, saying, 'Help, help, help!' And it was heartbreaking to listen to her, but what could we do? Not a thing till the next day when the paint had dried, and then of course we all rushed over to her and calmed her down and gave her some food. Believe it or not, she lived like that for 6 months like that, upside down on the ceiling with her legs stuck permanently in the paint. She really did. We fed her every day. We brought her fresh flies straight from the web. But then, on the 26th of last April, Aunt Sponge, the late Aunt Sponge I mean, happened to glance up at the ceiling and she spotted her. 'A spider!' she cried. 'A disgusting spider! Quick, fetch me the mop with the long handle!' And then, oh, it was so awful I can't bear to think of it." Miss Spider wiped away a tear and looked sadly at the centipede. "You poor thing," she murmured. "I do feel sorry for you." Poor Miss Spider. So much tragedy in her life. We should be nicer to spiders. I know I said that Uncle Scotty doesn't really care for spiders. That is true. But we should maybe think about spiders from their perspective every now and then. They're sad. Getting wiped away all the time. Here is the centipede covered in purple paint. This looks black and white because it is, but the paint is actually purple. There's the old green grasshopper. What a great suit he has on. He aims, and the spider just before she's about to cry when she's thinking about her grandmother. Huh. "It'll never come off," the earthworm said brightly. Our centipede will never move again. He will turn into a statue, and we shall be able to put him in the middle of the lawn with a bird bath on top of his head. We could try peeling him like a banana, the old green grasshopper suggested. Or rubbing him with sandpaper, the ladybug said. Now, if he stuck out his tongue, the earthworm said, smiling a little for perhaps the first time in his life. If he stuck it out really far, we could all catch hold of it and start pulling. And if we pulled hard enough, we could turn him inside out and he would have a new skin. There was a pause while the others considered this interesting proposal. I think, James said slowly, I think that the best thing to do... Then he stopped. What was that? He asked quickly. I heard a voice. I heard someone shouting. Should we see who's shouting? Should we? Let's do it. Chapter 30. They all raised their heads listening. Shh, there it is again. But the voice was too far away for them to hear what it was saying. It's a cloud man, Miss Spider cried. I just know it's a cloud man. They're after us again. It came from above, the earthworm said, and automatically everyone looked upward. Everyone except the centipede, who couldn't move. Ouch, they said. Help! Mercy! We're going to catch it again this time! For what they saw now, swirling and twisting directly over their heads, was an immense black cloud, a terrible, dangerous, thundery-looking thing that had begun to rumble and roar, even as they were staring at it. And then, from high up on the top of the cloud, the faraway voice came down to them once again, this time very loud and clear. On with the faucets, it shouted. On with the faucets, on with the faucets. 3 seconds later, the hole underneath of the cloud seemed to split and burst open like a paper bag, and then out came the water. They saw it coming. It was quite easy to see because it wasn't just raindrops. It wasn't raindrops at all. It was a great solid mass of water that might have been a lake or a whole ocean dropping out of the sky on top of them. And down it came, down and down and down, crashing first onto the seagulls and then onto the peach itself, while the poor traveler shrieked with fear and groped around frantically for something to catch a hold of. The peach stem, the silk strings, anything they could find. And all the time the water came pouring and roaring upon them, bouncing and smashing and sloshing and slashing and swishing and swashing and swirling and surging and whirling and gurgling and gushing and rushing and rushing and rushing. And it was like being pinned down underneath the biggest waterfall in the world and not being able to get out. Here you can see being pinned down against the biggest waterfall in the world and not being able to get out. They couldn't speak. They couldn't food. They couldn't breathe. And James Henry Trotter, holding on madly to one of the silk strings above the peach stem, told himself that this must surely be the end of everything at last. But then, just as suddenly as it had started, the deluge stopped. Deluge. Deluge is like that huge stream of water, just like a deluge of something is like so much of it coming at once. The deluge stopped. They were out of it, and it was all over. The wonderful seagulls had flown right through it, and had come out safely on the other side. Once again, the giant peach was sailing peacefully through the mysterious moonlit sky. I am drowned, gasped the old green grasshopper, spitting out water by the pint. It's gone right through my skin, the earthworm groaned. I always thought my skin was waterproof, but it isn't now, and now I'm full of rain. Look at me, shouted the centipede excitedly. It's washed me clean. It's washed me clean. The paint's all gone. I can move again. You see the happy centipede in his bucket hat and all of his boots. That's the worst news I've had in a long time, the earthworm said. The centipede was dancing around the deck and turning somersaults in the air and singing at the top of his voice. Oh, hooray for the storm and the rain. I can move, I don't feel any pain. And now I'm a pest, I'm bigger and the best. The most marvelous pest once again. Oh, do shut up, the old green grasshopper said. Look at me, cried the centipede. Look at me, I am freed, I am freed. Not a scratch, not a bruise, nor a bleed. To his grave, this fine gent, they all thought they had sent, and I very near went. Oh, I very near went, but they sent quite the wrong centipede. And that's the end of that chapter. And we will find out what happens next on Next Time with Storytime with Uncle Scotty. I've been your host, Uncle Scotty, with his own mug, with our own mugs, with your own mugs. We have our own mugs. Special thank you to our sponsors, Time and Time Again, spicing up story time since 8:21 in the morning. Thank you again. We'll see you next time on Storytime with Uncle Scotty. Bye.